Thank you for your patience and your family's patience. Could you bring the mic to you and state your name for the record during your testimony?
My name is Felicia Pendleton. I am a grieving mother of Jayvon Mitchell-Pendleton, which was murdered 2 weeks ago from homicide, shot 3 times, once in the leg, the buttocks, and in the head, by a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old. My son had his whole life ahead of him. He had a plan, he had a goal. And they took that from him. And I'm here, one, because parents have to start taking responsibility for their children. That 15-year-old, they found him inside of a house squatting with 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds with guns. If curfew was in place, that wouldn't be an issue. If truancy was in place, it wouldn't be an issue. They stopped the Truancy Act when all of the kids was acting all crazy in Center City with the flash mobs and stuff. They was on that truancy thing, heavy. But once that ceased and slowed down, it stopped. Curfew. Who's on curfew? These parents don't even know where their children are at. This kid was 15 years old. And when we mean by crash dummies, we mean by a 20-year-old having a 15-year-old along with him to do the dirty work along with him because, they think he's going to go to the juvenile justice center. They think that everything is going to be put on this juvenile, and they're not going to do no time. Parent has to start taking responsibility. They have to start being made accountable of their children. I knew when my son was 20 years old, I knew where he was at all times. I call. Even if he's in the car with someone, do they have driver's license? Who car are you in? Who house are you in? What address are you at? Because if anything was to happen to you, I need to know where you at. Make sure you keep your non-driver's license on you, your identification on you. But some of these young folks, they don't realize it. Some of these kids are so cold-hearted that they're going to these older folks because of the crash dummy system, because they feel like they don't have anyone. A lot of these kids has dropped out of the 8th grade. They feel like they don't have nobody, no resources, and no one can help them. It should be help for them because they feel like, I'm not in school. I dropped out of the 8th grade. Now that I'm 18, 19 years old, I have no education. I have nothing else to do but go to the streets. And I've heard all of these programs that's out here. This is the first time I'm hearing of any of these programs. The only time I hear about stuff is when election time is coming up. I don't even know who my city councilman is in my neighborhood, and I live 2225 North Lambert Street. I have not seen my city council person. I have not heard from my city council person. I have not witnessed who he is unless I see him on the news, backing up another political person. Don't come knocking on my door, putting letters in my door or on my car during election time if you can't help me or help these children that's out here. And my son done been murdered by a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old. That makes absolutely no sense to me. Now, I have a group of young men, my son's friends. My son's friends, it's a group of them, 5 of them. They basically stay in this one house. No adult chaperones, but they're trying to work. They're trying to go to school. One of them was actually with my son when the situation happened. But he's been treated as he was the murderer himself. When they have the murderers on camera, why is he being treated as he was the one that committed the murder himself? Kicked his door in. So all of the young men in the neighborhood know that his door was kicked in, so he obviously snitched. So how was he supposed to go back to the community where he lived and people were looking at him like, oh, he's a rat. He snitched. And I was down around house. This young man didn't say a word out his mouth. But these young men don't know that. But because his door was kicked in and he was taken down, Oh, he done told somebody something because these young men is incarcerated now. Right now, all I'm asking for, help these young men, my son's friends. Help them. They don't know none of these programs that's out here. None of these programs that I've even heard today. I've helped my son by myself. My son graduated from Imotech. He played football for Imotech. My son was an active student in Cheney University and was actually filling out scholarship papers to take summer programs in the Cheney University summer courses in Philly instead of traveling all the way out of the county. We need tuition help for some of these. Everybody don't have high SAT scores. Everybody don't have high GPAs, but they want to be in school, and they should be able to be in school without having to worry about financial issues. But they don't, these resources is not made available to them at all. I talk to my son's friends, they come to my house, they respect me. I told them at my son's funeral, do not come with t-shirts and do not come with hoodies on. These young men came dressed. And I'm saying over 500 people came to my son's funeral. Out of respect for me, this is how these young men came. And they're not looking for no handout. They're not looking for no free ride. They're not looking for nothing free. All they asking is for an honest chance. They feel like they don't have an honest chance. Because right now, they're angry. They're angry for what happened to my son. I'm angry for what happened to my son. But if we don't get to these young men right now that want help right now, that anger will turn into something else. And that's not what we want. Because it just be another statistic or another murder. My son didn't deserve this at all. And it could have been him. It could have been anybody. And my son wasn't no drug dealer. And when I know it, because if somebody would have seen my son was hanging somebody's corner, I'm coming to get him. If somebody said that my son was doing this, that, and the other, I know a lot of people in the neighborhood, I'm coming to get you. And it may not sound right to none of y'all, but my son is 6'4". I'm 4'11". I'm coming with a baseball bat because you're getting your behind in my car. And I'm getting you out of these circumstances right now. But a lot of these kids, they don't have mothers like me. They're actually out here fending for themselves. They're trying to take care of themselves. They're trying to maintain for themselves. They know nothing about no programs that's out here. When I say some of these kids that I know, not my son friends, because all my son friends they graduated. Some of them have high GPAs. They don't have the guidance or the tools to move forward in their lives. And like I said, right now, they're angry. And if we don't get to these kids right now, listen, I'm ready to mentor you right now today. I'm here to help you right now today. You need resume writing? I have a place there. Somebody will stand there with you because some of them has never written a resume a day in their life. So they don't know what comes along with a resume. They need somebody. It's a lot of city officials. There was a lot of men in this room. We have a lot of young folks out here that need a lot of these city officials and grown folks in their lives because some of their fathers is not. You see who's here? Mom, mothers. That's all we really have is mothers. My sister, single mother. My mother, single mother. It's a lot of suited men in here. Some of these young men don't even know how to dress for an interview. What to say on an interview. How to act. Some of them are intimidated to go on an interview because they think they're going to be looked at in the wrong way. They don't have the attire to wear on an interview. I told some of my son friends, listen, if you need a button-up shirt, I don't have no money. But if you need a button-up shirt to go on an interview, I will go and buy you a button-up shirt. If you need somebody to talk to, you come call me. If you're hungry, come to my house. I will feed you. But I'm just one person amongst others that's trying to help these young people. They need help right now, today. They need it today.
I want to I want to first say this is probably the most important testimony we heard today, because what I took from what I've heard before and I've taken from today is that you are as much concerned about the loss of your son, but as concerned about those who are still alive. And your hurt, you turn to caring for them, which is, to me, phenomenal. You pointed out some things, and I want to ask you a couple of questions. Number one, I acknowledge you come from a strong female collective family.
Yes.
And that there seems to be absence of men.
Yes.
When we went to your house to offer our condolences, some of the guys on the corner asked, "Are you a cop? Are you a preacher? Are you with the district attorneys?" They don't see guys like us on a day-to-day level in their world.
In their
and sometimes
community.
we sit up here. Yeah, well, yeah, in your hood. I come to your hood too. But the point is, we need to have more of us as examples to them. A couple of things. You mentioned truancy.
Yes.
And that is a problem. It's something that we can take away from today and say that we need to fund more anti-truancy efforts. Keep them off the streets, keep them in classrooms where they belong. You talked about curfew.
Yes.
We need to start to pay attention to that, not just on Chestnut Street,
Yes.
but on Champlain Street.
Yes.
And start to
On
balance
Susquehanna
that.
Avenue,
On Susquehanna.
on Huntington Street, on Somerset Street.
You also talked about young people raising their own.
Yes.
Household of 5 individuals that have no adult supervision.
None.
And they get recruited into the crash dummy system. If we're talking about holistic programs in community schools, Bilal, we got to reach out and figure out in advance of a murder where these high-risk young people are and get help to them. What I hear is a lot of programs up here, but if we don't translate that down to the real world where they are, there's a disconnect. You talked about also jobs today.
Today.
Not just job
Not job readiness. Today.
Talk about that. These folks really want not a handout, they want some help.
Exactly.
So I heard you. I wanted all of you to hear this. So as we go through our budget process, everything that we do should be to that end. Whether we're talking about increased funding for education, whether we talk about suicide prevention because there's mental health issues involved here. We talked about trauma teams. Talk about that you needed a trauma team to come out and deal with it. There was none.
There was none. When I found out my son was shot, when I got to the hospital, I was just in his room by myself. They wouldn't even let my family, maybe 1 or 2 people, come in the room with me. I'm crying out of my mind. Nobody from the hospital would talk to me. No police officers would come and talk to me. I'm just sitting and I'm waiting to hear that my son is dead. No help whatsoever. And it took a lot out of me. I'm a broken mother right now. My son was 20 years old and he had a plan. And his plan was not to be murdered. At the age of 20. My son planned, he had a plan at the age of 26. What young man do you know number is 26? Mom, I will be graduating from college before I turn 26. Mom, I'm going to marry my girlfriend, which is his college. They all go to college together at 26. I'm going to move you out this neighborhood at 26, Mom. The age of 26, that was his target number. And I don't want to make it seem like my son was this goody two-shoes, because my son come from a behavioral health situation. My son was diagnosed with ADHD. My son was diagnosed with bipolar. But I never gave up on him. I was that one mother that went on every single school trip from pre-K to high school with my son, and he's 20 years old. I was never going to allow my son to become a victim of his circumstances. It wasn't happening on my watch. You acting up in school, I'm at the school. I stopped working at my job to be more of a productive parent with my son. I fought for mental health services for my son. It wasn't nothing, oh, we have these services here for you, or we have these services here for me. I knew nothing about mental services until I had to do it with my son. I figured these things out on my own, and my son turned out to be the man that I groomed him to be, the man that I wanted him to be. He overcame so much. People from back then would never think that Jayvon is who he is today. So we can't just say, the mental health, because they can overcome anything, as of my son did. I kept my son active in baseball, football. People didn't know that my son played chess and was very good at it. Good chess player. He played for the South Philly Sharks since he was the age of 11 years old. Then when he moved over to North Philly, he played for MOTEP football team where he graduated from. He recruited to play for Cheney High School, but when he got there, he was like, Mom, I just want to focus on school. And I told him, I said, Jayvon, if this is what you want to do, this is what you want to do. I'm all for it. You're in school. That's where you wanted to be. Nobody forced him to be there. He made it he would be like, Mom, I'm going to the executive office to talk to them. If he had issues, I'm going to the higher officials to speak with them. But now that my son is gone, I'm not going to let his death be in vain, because he has some friends out here that needs help. They're not bad children. They're not drug dealers. They don't need job readiness. They need jobs right now. Because if they don't get jobs right now, they're going to end up on somebody's corner selling drugs or trapping in somebody's trap house if they don't get help today.
Listen, once again, most important testimony of today, because we can plan and think until you've lived that. One other thing, and I'm going to pass off to Councilman Green. The close proximity of the alleged perpetrators and you, for us in this room, we're not talking about on the other side of the city. Tell us what we're dealing with by way of proximity.
Right now, I'm dealing with between my mother's house and my house. I have to cross the path of the perpetrator's family and the perpetrator friends that's constantly on social media, free this person, free that person, free this person. That's how close we are. We share the same supermarket. We share the same laundromats, same schools. I went to school with one of the young men's mother. That's how close in proximity I am to these people. No one has picked up the phone and said, Miss Pendleton, can we move you and your mother out of this situation? Because we're full of anger. When we ride past this area, we're full of anger. They took my baby from me. He's 20 years old and he had a plan. These young men don't have no plan that killed my son. The young man that's 15 years old, this is not the first time I even heard of him being in part of a homicide. He just got caught this time at 15. My mom, between my house and my mom's house, we're right there. They're right in between. Nobody said, Miss Pendleton, do we need to move your family or do we need to move your mother out of this area because of retaliation? One, some of these media places, Philly.com, and some of these places have put my address inside of these papers. Why? I'm a victim. Why do the 2200 block of Lambert Street has to be inside of these papers? We're victims. We're not the ones that did the murdering. Why do my block and my address have to be in these papers? I don't understand it. I still have to live there. I don't have money to just pick up and relocate. Neither do my mother. And everybody knows us.
So my point to you is there's close proximity. It's not like you move to another city. You have to see them every day. So a witness who might want to come forward gets intimidated by the same kids riding around a 4-block area. Is that your experience?
Exactly. I mean, these people has been on social media. F what the family say. And that's another thing. These parents, some of these parents, y'all need to start holding these parents accountable. They need to know what's going on in their children's social media sites. They need to know what's going on inside their homes. They could check these homes. They need to stop being afraid of these kids. My son was 6'4" and I'm 4'11". There will never be a time that I'll be afraid of this kid. Ever in my life. I'm mom all day long. All day. They on social media, F with the family says. You know, talking about vindication. Who are you vindicating? My son is dead. These people can still see their children. They can still talk to them. They can still eat, send pictures or whatever. I can't do that. My son is gone.
Councilman Green.
Ms. Pendleton, our condolences on your loss. But
Thank
I'm
you.
also inspired by your strength and your conviction. And earlier when we were having a testimony, I wish representatives from the DA's office and the school district was here, because that back and forth is, lack of a better word, I'll just say it, BS that we hear about.
Yeah.
Where you're dealing with this issue every day, and they're going back and forth on procedures and policies, and to hear the pain in your voice, and we're dealing with some procedural stuff that, to me, at the end of the day, seems more personality-driven as opposed to solution-driven. And these are the things that we need to hear and be reminded about, no matter if you're in this seat or that seat or some other seat, about the issue that we're dealing with every day. So about the issue of accountability of parents, clearly you have done that in your life, and we need to make sure that we use tools like the truancy issue, because I would probably venture the 15-year-old and a 20-year-old that unfortunately murdered your son probably had truancy issues in their background. And so we've got to get beyond the back and forth of the games of what we can and cannot do and what we can do. And so that's one of the issues that I know I'll be speaking about as we go through the budget process. But you also talked about the issue of jobs. And we talked about earlier today, both Councilman Johnson, Councilman Jones, other members of this panel have talked about, we cannot forget about the economic development perspective to this issue. Too often we talk about this from a public safety perspective, and at least now we're talking about behavioral health, but what about the economic development and jobs opportunity? From this perspective, and that's too often we leave that aspect out, and we need to make sure we continue to hear about it. Just earlier today, before I came to this hearing, I learned that Lincoln University has a program that if you're a Pennsylvania resident and you go to Lincoln University and maintain a 3.0, you can go to any state-related college or university for grad school for free. Now, I'm someone who I think I'm somewhat informed about issues. I didn't even know that. So having the young people, like the young people that your sons were friends with, that have good GPAs, that could go to a Lincoln University, they may have to pay student loans for undergrad, but they could go to law school, med school, or some other school for free if they graduate with Lincoln. So that's some of the things that we need to do a better job in getting the word out.
It's one thing if you have a GPA of a 3.0, but it's another thing is if you don't have a high GPA, if you don't have high SAT scores, but you're accepted in school and you want to be in school. What about those people that just want to be in school? They don't have, some of them don't even have mental health issues. My son was one of them. He had an IEP throughout high school. He didn't have a high SAT scores and he didn't have a high GPA, but he was accepted in college and that's where he wanted to be.
And I agree with you. And having a son who's 15 who's autistic, I think Lincoln and Cheney's are those type of HBCUs who take the clay and they mold them into someone with a 3.0. And I think we need to make sure that we continue to do that and provide opportunity and information to the young people that you're helping to mentor that want to do the right thing. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And what I want you to know is that these words will be translated into action. As we go into the budget process next week, that's why it was important that Councilman Johnson added you to the witness list. They needed to hear this. We need to adjust we had the power of the budget. And there's other people that are out here that are testifying that are saying the same things, that it's important for us to do the big global policy stuff, but until we break it down and translate it to young people who can hear it, to mothers who can use it, what are we doing? And so we're going to do a better job. Councilman Tollenberg.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Pendleton, I'm very deeply saddened by your loss. My
Thank
deepest
you.
condolences, not only to you, but to the friends of your son and any other mothers that have lost a child in this way. I think it is terrible. Chairman Jones, I think you said something that really moved me this morning, and I'm going to repeat it. I'm not going to do it as eloquently as you, but it reached home. If 10 whales swam up from the Atlantic Ocean, from Cape May, and all of a sudden got themselves to Penn's Landing and died, the national news media would be here. They would all be here. Well, you know what? I think whales are important, but I think human beings are much, much more important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't have a question for you, but I have a comment. I'm a newly elected councilman. I was elected in November. But I spent 5 years here as a staff assistant to Councilwoman Joan Krajewski, and I was chief of staff to Councilman Jack Kelly when he was a district member. I've heard a lot of testimony. I've never heard more and better testimony that made more sense to the problem we're discussing. I commend you for being here.
Thank you.
If the roles were reversed and it was a family member of mine, I do not think that I could find it in my heart to be anywhere in the public. The message you have given, all of Philadelphia should see. All of the news media should see.
I agree.
The nation should see.
I agree.
The news media right now is not here. But I will tell you this. I will tell you something about council. We actually tape these hearings. You're on video, and so am I. I've never done this, but I want to watch your testimony again because it's moving, powerful, and it's real. And my comment is we must, as human beings, do something to help other human beings. This problem must come to an end. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your leadership and my colleagues as well.
Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. We do have the media documenting this particular hearing, but not the actual television stations. They were here earlier on, but I think the press box, no, actually the press box over there are individuals representing the various newspapers documenting. It's okay, just for the record, but we don't have the actual television crew, which usually portrays these acts of incidents of violence on a day-to-day basis. There isn't here right now. What should be here is what my fellow councilman is alluding to. I just want to just commend you on your strength.
Thank you.
And just being here. And it's quite obvious that your testimony is not only just about yourself and your current feelings and conditions as a result of you losing your son, but also the plight of African American young men in general. And that says a lot about a person's character, because normally one would want to be selfish in incidents like this. And so we just want to say thank you for taking your time out of your schedule and being here. And to all the mothers, this group has been on the forefront of addressing this issue. I think it's kind of shameful, to be quite frank with you, that from a funding standpoint, you aren't like a United Way type of organization here, and we'll probably have to have a frank conversation with the councilman to figure out why that isn't the case in terms of your contracting opportunities with the various city agencies that's actually going out there and doing the work. Because I remember when your program first started, I remember Men United Against a Better Philadelphia before I even got involved as being elected official, and was also on the ground, going to the neighborhoods, doing intervention, being proactive, reaching out to the young men on the corner and the young ladies, because when you look at who's being arrested for trafficking the guns, it's young ladies, not the young men. It's, what you call it, crash dummies, Councilman? Well, the other conversation with the crash dummies is the young man who has the record that gets the young lady to go to Coliseumos to buy the guns, and for you to go start purchasing, to go carry the guns. And so I just commend you ladies for being the strength. But I also call us men out, particularly African-American men, because it's really our role to protect the women in our community. That's right. I mean, no disrespect to anybody else's culture, but it's our responsibility. And once you lose that, that's a very telling problem about where we're at as relates to us as a people and really stepping up to the plate. But I will say this. because I also don't want to do a disservice to some men that I do work with, such as Kenyatta Bay, Point Breeze Youth Development Basketball League, the founder Daoud Bey and Iman Sushadeen, and his team with and Bilal Qayyum and Eber Divine and the Interfaith Coalition. There are some men who are out here doing some work, doing what I call side work therapy in the middle of the neighborhoods. We also have, I want to put him on the spot, but a young man who have used his celebrity to step up to the plate and go on a school tour and talk about redemption in his own life. Meek Mills, who's here today, who just stopped past to talk about it. And not so much to put him on the spot, but he's from that generation of young people that may even could identify, probably more than myself, which is, sometimes for me a hard pill to swallow because, I come from, 18th and Dickinson, South Philadelphia, lived on one side of the law and changed my life to be a betterment of my community. But at the end of the day, I think these hearings will help bring all of us together to begin looking at how do we use all of this power together to kind of address in this issue of youth gun violence. But I thank you for stepping up. Yes,
I just like to say, I'm one woman with one small house. I invite 5 to 10 young men to come to my house, and I talk to these boys all of the time. Do you need me to help you with anything? Do you need food? Do you need something to wear? Even to my son's funeral, if you don't have a button-up shirt, I will buy you a button-up shirt. But I'm one woman in one house. That's all I can do, because my son's death is not going to go in vain. It's not going to happen. I don't care if I have to go in these corners. That's what we need. People out, they used to have, the Black Panthers used to come on the corner and stuff like that. You need to have people come on these corners and letting these young folks know what's available to them. Because if they only have an 8th grade education, they don't know no better. They don't know that they have a job court that they can get into. Or they still can get a job even with an 8th grade education. Get to these corners. Y'all know where these target corners at? Y'all know where they at. It's on the news all of the time. We need more men mentors. Listen, young fella, I hear Miss Felicia say, you trying to work? Let me take you under my wing. Let me show you what dressing up like a man, shaking hands with a man, looking me eye to eye in my face to show that we respect each other. That's what we need. And furthermore, making these parents accountable for these children, period.